Petworking is presented by Maya Strategy Group, a leading market research and strategy consulting firm, helping clients in the pet care and animal health industries navigate strategic challenges for almost 2 decades.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and here doing a little bit of a twist, a one-on-one preview session of what's to come at Global Pet with some of the most influential figures in the industry. Here today with me, I have Greg Kean, Vice President of Innovation at Wellness Pet Company, who's a multiple time guest on Petworking, and always happy to have him back and have a chance to chat. Greg, what are you looking forward to at Global Pet? What are we going to see?
Sure. Number one, thanks for having me back, Peter. Always a pleasure to be a guest and hang out with you a bit. So couple things. One area that I'm very interested in is, I guess I'm not officially naming this, but I guess I call it Humanization 2.0. You know, prior trends have always talked about the humanization of the pet food industry, and that's a real thing. But it really started with, you know, the no list and what ingredients we don't use, and really propping up, you know, real meat is the first ingredient, and a lot of the messages around natural and so on that really humanized the ingredient panel for the consumer. And that was clearly something they were looking for, as they were looking for better for you products, different levels of nutrition. But I'd say over the last few years, there's an absolute force and macro trend towards, obviously, fresh feeding. Media and advertising is really sort of retraining the consumer. And I really love actually what our CMO Allison said last week when we were talking about different insights, that if you're a new consumer, you know, I've been in the pet food industry for a long time. You've obviously been around a long time. But if you are a new pet owner and you're looking at all the media and what exists in the pet food industry today, it's a very different world. And your starting point is, yes, there's kibble, but there's this whole world of toppers, there's freeze-dried, air-dried, and fresh. So your perspective as a starting point is just very different. And I think this will continue to influence the types of needs that consumers will have going forward. So I expect to see more of a nod towards different processing types being incorporated into the feeding regimen that consumers are looking for. And I think we'll see that next week.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't have to look much further than, you know, one of the staunchest backers and kibble stalwarts, Hills. They just made that acquisition of Prime 100 to get into fresh. And I know you and I had said, you know, when we were talking a few months ago, you know, it wouldn't be surprising to see that. But, you know, we were certainly, you know, our conversation was fairly prescient, because, you know, I feel like it wasn't more than a couple weeks after we talked about that they made that acquisition. And, you know, I would expect that they'll be showcasing that at Global.
Yeah, I thought about our conversation too with respect to that. I mean, I look at, and this is probably, it sounds like a negative word, but I feel like there's a level of fossilized thinking around how we feed pets in the sort of foundation of the pet food industry. And yeah, sure, them acquiring Prime 100 is a clear signal that the world has changed, and we're looking at a variety of different ways to really elevate that mealtime experience and bring additional benefits, you know, to mealtime and mealtime excitement for pets. Yeah,
and I think, you know, even within fresh, there's that bifurcation, you know, that we've seen with, you know, I know we're going to see, talking with folks at Primal, they talked about, you know, launching a shelf-stable goat milk. We saw Nulo last year launch the shelf-stable, gently cooked meals. You know, there's the whole flip side of freeze-dried, and how freeze-dried and raw can, you know, complement or, you know, be substituted for fresh nutrition, there's fresh frozen, there's fresh shelf stable, there's fresh pet, which is refrigerated. Getting back to what your CMO said, you know, if you were a first time pet owner, I can imagine it would be overwhelming where to start.
Yeah, overwhelming, and the real winner are dogs and cats. In this
Yeah.
in this specific case, dogs, because they are now being presented with some pretty great options. Our Core Plus product, which incorporates freeze-dried kibble into it, is selling really well and has experienced even faster growth because of that trend. So if you're a dog and that's what your owner chooses for you, that's pretty cool, because you're going to have not only like an amazing nutritious meal, but you're going to have a meal that is, super tasty as well. So they are the clear winners in this trend.
Yeah, no, I think it's a revolution that I think began with human food, but we're seeing the benefits of whole food nutrition in human diets and human nutrition, and I think that is now that philosophy, of if I'm doing this for myself, why shouldn't I be doing it for my dog? And I'm curious, we'll be having, I'm going to post it a few weeks out, but a check in with leap years, and I was just talking with Loyal at WVC, but I'm curious to see what we see in healthy aging, longevity, vitality type claims, because I think that's the one area where dogs are actually kind of leading the pack, because sadly they have shorter lifespans than us, but it does lead itself so much more to further study and more effective study of aging technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really fertile area for more research, but I think that's exactly what it needs. I think the research that Loyal has done has been excellent, but there's really not to date enough research on some of these compounds that could have a beneficial effect on the amount of years a dog lives. I think or cats as well. I think there's a lot of great data around some whole food nutrition that clearly has benefits in terms of the quality years, whether it's things like omega-3 fatty acids, and there's just a lot of great research on prebiotic fiber and probiotics and now postbiotics. But in terms of some of those interventions that are sort of in that same league as NMN, or even going so far as rapamycin, some of those ingredients, there's just not a lot of long-term research that's been dedicated to showing that those interventions have proven outcomes. That being said, there was a great piece of research that was released this week, I believe, on the role of rapamycin in cardiomyopathy in cats as an intervention that has been approved by the FDA. So there's a lot of progress here, but I think there's a lot more research that needs to be done with actual longevity in terms of extending the years versus mitigating issues that animals have in their known lifespans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think more of what we're going to see is probably more claims around healthy aging, around vitality. I'll be interested to see if people go as far as to put longevity on pack. I feel like that's probably treading a line that some companies may not want to cross, and that the FDA may or may not object to. But on another note, you did mention, this FDA study in cats. We've been hearing since Pet Connect, this is the year of the cat, and I've been seeing some cool cat-specific launches that are going to be taking place. What do you think? I know we've said, for the past 3-4 years, we've heard it's going to be the year of the cat. Do you think this is the year it finally comes to fruition?
God bless the cats if it is, because we have been hearing that. I think the trends in terms of cat ownership, especially with new Gen Z pet owners, is certainly pushed the number of cat owning households up. So I think there's a lot of reason to innovate around cats. I think what we've what we've seen, and I expect to see a lot more of, is more demand for products that have more visually appealing real meat type of ingredients and products, and probably more simplified ingredient panels, focused on cat feeding. We know a lot of those products have great palatability, and great reaction and feeding from feeding those types of products. So I do expect to see more products that are still in, I would say, the more traditional pet food processing type of realm, but with probably more visual and real and appealing, easily identifiable ingredients that a consumer sees when they open the can, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah. And we would think that cat tends to follow dog, but I think we may start to see some more cat specific innovation and cat focused innovation, beyond just, bringing fresh into cat or bringing freeze dried into cat. Whether it's through, automated feeders or, other innovations that are drawn from research specifically focused on cats. I'll be curious to see if that plays out.
Yeah, that's the one thing I don't feel like there's probably been enough of is products in that realm of technology and feeding. There's some really interesting products. Bistro Cat, of course, has done a nice job pioneering a feeding system, and I know Sphinx is working on a product as well. I think those have a really nice role to play, especially in the wet feeding regimen of cat owners. But one of the other areas that we have seen with the advent of products like the lickable treats and so on are products that are geared towards bonding. So how do you actually spend time with your cat as a cat owner? Cats are great companions, and I think they're amazing to watch and spend time with. So having products that are nutritional and also geared towards engaging them and having those type of interactions, I think we may potentially see some more of at this show and potentially at Super Zoo as well.
Yeah, and then definitely on the dog side, we're seeing bonding and enrichment. It just continues to explode with new and innovative treats. Woof. I remember you and I talking last year at Global Pet. Really kind of came out of nowhere to steal the show, and we continue to see ecosystem partnerships and more hard goods manufacturers kind of partnering with treat manufacturers. I'll be interested to see how that evolves. Greg, I don't want to keep you all day, but anything exciting from wellness that we should expect at the show?
Absolutely. We have a whole slate of products, but I'm going to highlight three that we're really excited about. The first is our cat wet appetizing entrees product, which is a very high meat, real meat type product in 2.8 ounce pouches. We previously launched in 1.4 ounce pouches. Those have been doing very well. Cats have been loving them and enjoying them, so we wanted to offer those in a larger size in the 2.8 ounce pouches for anyone that has multiple cats or wants to feed, make those a real full meal for those cat parents. The other product we have is under Whimsies, which is called Freshies, and this is to address fresh breath, which we know is a really significant pain point for a lot of dog owners that like myself, that get very close to their pets' faces and snuggle and so on. So this product has a little bit softer texture. It has parsley to help with really masking that fresh breath, and it's great for older dogs that have a more difficult time chewing as well with that softer texture. So we're excited about that product. And then it's been on the market now for about a month or a little bit more, but we are launching two sensitive skin and stomach recipes, one under Complete Health which is just a little bit lower protein, but great digestibility, has all the wonderful benefits in terms of high digestibility for dogs that may have stomach issues, and then the omega-3 fatty acids, 3s and 6s for great skin and coat health. The product that is also under this sensitive skin and stomach launch is our Core Plus product, which is higher protein, extremely tasty, and it has real bits of whole freeze-dried cuts of salmon in it. So, the beauty here is a pet that has some of these issues. You think about these diets being a little bit more in the therapeutic sort of realm, and they may not necessarily taste as good. This diet tastes amazing. Dogs absolutely love it, especially with those fresh cuts of salmon. So a diet that is sort of addressing a solution doesn't have to taste bad. It could taste amazing, and that's what this diet does.
Exciting. Cool. Well, we got a little bit of World of the Cat launch there, and the Whimsy Dental has been really hot the last few years, and I love the idea of big part of why I brush Penny's teeth every day. So she has fresh breath, and I feel good about getting those kisses. So
Yeah.
anything you can add in there is really cool too. So yeah, that'll be exciting. We'll look forward to swinging by the booth and look forward to seeing you in Orlando. So
Yeah, great to see you down there, Peter.
Sounds good. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and here with Patrick McGee, veteran guest of Petworking and 18-year veteran of Global Pet, celebrating his 40th birthday today. Patrick, thank you so much for joining. We're doing a few segments here to talk to folks about what they're looking forward to at Global, what kind of trends we expect to see. Getting excited for the, as you put it when we were talking earlier, the big game for us East Coast folks in the pet industry coming up here next week. So welcome back to the show. And you said this is going to be a little bit of a unique experience for you because GetJoy doesn't have a booth this year. So you're going to get a chance to walk the floor and observe the trends, much like I'll be doing. What are you expecting to see?
Peter, yeah, I thank you for the intro. Thank you for the birthday shout out. Thank you for the call out to Global. It is the big game so much in how we prepare, how the industry works, and I'm excited to see a lot of things. What I'm expecting to see, I'm expecting to see a lot of people talking about, value, and I think it's going to be in the way of, how can I make the most of the pocketbook of the retailer. If we're talking about retailer, if we're talking about vet care, how accessible can it be? What some of these things that cost are inhibiting, I think we're going to look at that because that just opens up the opportunity. And then obviously fresh, minimally processed, whole natural ingredients. I mean, those conversations have been coming for years, but I do think we're going to see more around that. If the human industry followed a little bit of what Natural Products West a couple of weeks ago was doing, and typically it does, that time lag is only sped up as I've watched it over the last few years. It used to be 5 or 10 years where you saw products and things talked about in the human world to come over to pet, and now it's, some things are almost flipped even because it's just the way that it goes. But I think you're going to see a lot of functional conversations, and it's always, what's the most hot topic? Is it mushrooms? Is it CBD? Is it let's say functional treats, functional chews? We have a lot of exciting products to talk about. We showed up big in the last couple of shows, and we're really excited to meet with a lot of our customers that we've been talking to for a year over at a distributor booth, or really talking to some of the other friends and colleagues in the industry to just hear what they're hearing. Because I think this is not only just a place where everyone kind of prepares for and shows up and has all their meeting schedules as best they can, but they also are coming here to hear what questions are being asked and what retailers are bringing to their booths, or what's being talked about in the aisles. So some of what I'm expecting to see is those obviously on trend type things. What I hope to see, I'm hoping to see a lot of really great questions, a lot of ways to feed our pets better, a lot of the opportunities for us to reach more pets in those dialogues, in the way that we engage with communities outside of obviously just, what sells on shelf, but also how we're partnering and working together. So that's the pet working in a sum, right? Like we're talking together here about how it all comes together, but I think that's kind of like my little bit.
Yeah. No, I want to touch on, you mentioned, the functional and lots of conversations around that and what's going to be the hot topic. One I'm kind of expecting to see, and I know it is near and dear to you guys at Get Joy, and you guys have done a lot with it, is healthy aging, longevity, vitality. What do you expect we're going to see there? Do you guys have anything that we should be looking for from you guys on that front?
So, I mean, what we have done and what we continue to try and do with some of our, innovation and what's even around the corner, you'll see a lot of people have a lot of bullets and icons and different things across their bags and messaging and pictures. I think the goal is everyone's trying to make the complex simple, and whoever does it first in a way that the educated retailer, the educated consumer, the educated pet parent, and only becoming more educated in a lot of ways, however appeals to them without confusing them, losing their attention, and really relays the message that gets to the health question that really leads to longevity and health span. We've partnered with Dan Buettner of Blue Zones, and we have a really cute docu-series that we did that I hope to get, show a couple people on the iPad or, whatever it is that I got there handy. But I think when you think about the human dog relationship and you program in some of the human longevity that we know is part of the formula, activity, walking, being outside, engagement with community, the easiest way to get those extra steps is put a dog by your side. The easiest way to engage in a conversation about loneliness with someone else is with two dogs that bring two lonely people together at a dog park. I mean, so much of what we look to talk about in longevity and wellness is great. It's a piece of the formula in diet. We talk about going beyond the bowl so much. The science behind it is really complicated. Pre, pro, and postbiotics, of which we were the first to add in our freeze dried. Having that in our supplement form for those people that are want to add it into what they're already doing. Those kind of opportunities to simplify the complex science that goes on in the gut to explain it, to really program the overall routine to become a better way of living to benefit health and longevity. People who do that best and tell that story the best and actually, go into markets with the products that they're talking about made the way that they should be, with experts, kind of guiding that. I think that's going to be the big winners, but that's not anything new. That's just kind of how it's been over time. It's fresh whole foods are kind of upsetting maybe some of the traditional combos, but the innovation I think you're going to see is, how do we get to fresh? How do we make it convenient? And there's always that cusp of if it gets too convenient, if it's too convenient, it's too good to be true, right? Or whatever the case might be. So there's always those combos. But there's a lot of good combos that you never expect to come from Global that, maybe in 2 months we could look back and go, hey, were we right? Were we wrong?
Yeah, I want to do this, and I was talking to Greg Kean from Wellness yesterday. He's doing a segment on this with me as well, and we last year we did sort of a panel on what to expect at Super Zoo. I kind of want to revisit this with the people and do a panel of what do we see at Global, what do we think, so if you're up for joining, I'd love to have you back on, and especially since you're going to get to be walking the floor, and that'll be new for you. You won't be tied to a booth or anything like that, but I definitely would love to compare notes and get a where, based on what we saw at Global, where do we think the industry is going? You mentioned fresh, and I've been saying, I think there's no more clear indication of, the prominence that fresh has gained. You see Hills acquire Prime 100, and, that is, kibble and science-backed kibble-based nutrition has been Hills' bread and butter for years. And, I think seeing them acquire a fresh manufacturer is a tip of the cap to, this is becoming more and more the
the mainstream in terms of how we're feeding our pets. And I saw it at WVC a few weeks ago. Freshpet's there, and we'll have a little segment that I did with them in the conference coming out soon. But they mentioned we've got to be here because vets are confused around fresh, and fresh is becoming more and more people are feeding it, but it's not a big part of what they're the the limited nutrition education that they're getting in vet school. So I think more and more we're going to see that. And I know you guys are right out there at the forefront of fresh whole food nutrition. So it'll be exciting to see, how many more new players are coming into this and adopting fresh whole food messaging as part of their strategy.
You hit it on the head. I asked a question at a PETA leadership conference, I don't know, almost 2 years ago. Similar to this, amongst a great panel, and I think you just nailed it. And VMX you said, or there's a couple different vet shows, but there's so many conversations there that really probably need to be. I wish that there was more conversations like that and those questions all captured in a spot that we could really sift through and go into it and say, okay, this is real, this is myth, this is debunked. We don't need to still be talking about this, but this is a real concern, and here's why. But at the end of the day, it goes back to, I think, the simplifying of the complex, in the sense that you can do all of these things and you can get the best care in the world. If you're not eating well, you're not getting the nutrition, that's a big controllable pillar. Whoever communicates that right now to the people, the simplest, because people are new to the category, or it's an emerging category, or does it best. Prime 100 is a great group of people. I mean, I know a couple of the folks there and they do a tremendous job. I think we've done a really good job as well in some of the ways to put assets that speak to the consumer who doesn't understand. And whether that's something that scans on a freezer to help understand what feeding guidelines are around a product that might be in a freezer next to something that's actually not the same product, right? Just because it's in the freezer doesn't mean it's fresh frozen dog food, or maybe someone just assumes it's raw, and that's not the case. You're seeing a lot more people separate into a fresh freezer, where they used to just give it a shelf in the regular freezer, and now they're getting multiple freezers and they're allocating that space. So, we can do everything under, our power to control all the things we can control, nutrition being the most controllable pillar, activity there after, and, really just everything else that kind of falls into place. We know fresh foods hits it on the head. You can argue over this or that on the nutrient deck of a bag of kibble, and kibble is great for the consumer that has to feed kibble as 100% of the diet. Okay, I understand that there's customers that do tremendously well. My dog lived, and we've heard those stories for years and years. Natural whole fresh foods as part of that diet, whether it's 10%, 20%, 30%, is going to be better. And there's studies coming out of places that have given raw the ability to have that conversation for a long time, and that information is only becoming bigger as more people do it. So when we think about the percentage of people feeding it as no percentage of the diet, and the percentage of people who still need to get onto it as a portion, like raw was 10, 20 years ago, like we're going to go through that same process as a new feeding format and understanding it nutritionally. Like cans is not even a convo you even hear anymore, right? And then we got to worry about, is that a metal container that we have to worry about tariffs or things of that nature? Maybe we do a recycling Tetra cart, for recycling sustainability efforts, which is always right, but you don't even hear about that. But all those foods are great. Those are not as, as processed as some of what we're talking about. So, and the ability to have that convo, simplify what is really complex nutritional convos to the pet parent, it goes back to fresh whole foods. And yes, we know that there could be all these different prescription things, but there's obviously a reason why those dogs that are eating like this for long periods of time aren't going to the vet as often. And that's not who the vet's seeing in a lot of cases. So, I mean, we have some partners and advisor on our board. He's an emergency vet there in Brooklyn, and you can imagine 24-hour care in Brooklyn. He was the first one. He's an amazing partner, but you don't go see him unless there's a problem with the emergency vet. So he sees the worst of the worst cases, and then sometimes the way that translate is pancreatitis or something, that is just simply due to a malnutrition issue, or got into something it shouldn't have, or whatever the case is. But sometimes it's really easy to identify the dogs that don't show up. And it's not the dogs on a certain type of diet or regimen or routine. And it's not the dogs that are typically overweight. And those dogs also have a lot of correlation around what their diet types are. So when you see partners and big companies putting money to research, it's amazing because there's only been more research about fresh moving into the future. And we know that this is the way, but like, we didn't just learn this. We started there, we went to processed, and now we're trying to go back. So how do we get to simple is really, again, what I think we're all trying to do with these assets and resources and processes, right? Like, who cooks their temperature at the lower temperature is the goal for a kibble company to say, right? You look
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it the last few years of, minimally processed, low heat, slow cooked, gently cooked, baked, yeah, it's all out there. It's interesting, you you touched on the macroeconomic piece there a little bit with metal and tariffs, and we certainly could go down that rabbit hole. I'm sure there'll be some conversations around the macro economic condition, but one that you mentioned earlier that I think you're right, and nobody's really brought it up yet is avian flu. What are we expecting there? I mean, I would assume it's going to have some impact on raw. I know at WVC, a big part of Fresh Pets messaging was we want to make sure everybody knows we're not raw. You don't have to worry about, any of the recalls with avian flu and things like that. What do you expect we're going to be hearing about that?
That is, I love that insight, and understanding what they're talking about at the vet level obviously is important because the worst, again, kind of going back to the emergency vet, the worst ones are the ones that go to the vet. The ones that don't show up are the ones you don't know about. I think the biggest thing that we've seen so far, and it's an emerging topic, and it continues to be, but thankfully, information moves pretty quickly nowadays, is, this is impacting cats more than dogs. And that's something that we know, like in terms of species overlap so far, that's what we've seen. Testing in terms of protocol and mandates needs to be something, as there's an evolving thing with the Paws Act and all of those things that are changing. I think we're seeing regiments and testing kind of reviewed as a whole. I think there's even an AFCO thing, a meeting coming up in the near future about what those mandates look like. Testing at the supplier is what is the concern, right? Like going back to the source of the fowl, is the most important thing. And your test and hold procedures there, like it's not like you're able to run a test and they're doing this third-party testing in normal labs today, but there will be protocols and regiments in place. And I can go back to, a long time ago when we started testing for things that started showing up, whether that be melamine or whether that be acetaminophen or, some of these random things that you never thought we start testing just becomes normal protocol of what the labs are testing. So keeping an eye on, what is happening scientifically in this is, I'm not going to be an expert, nor was I trying to predict the pandemic, right? Like we were all became, experts when the pandemic was happening, and we all become experts around avian flu, understanding what animals, how it's traveling, where it's showing up. Like, do we have the capabilities to communicate faster now? It's just getting that information out. So we have a company statement, as I'm sure a lot of companies do. But right now, as you said, there's going to be a lot of people talking about the concerns. And this is no different than any other pathogen in so many ways, right? It's the fact that it's a virus. You have protocols in place, and what those are. I think this is where we go back to the vet conversation. Why raw has gone to the VMX type expos and so many of those places for the last 10, 15 years with minimal penetration into the vet market, while you have fresh food almost skipping the process and going right to the vet channel, because it gives them that safety of the pathogen being removed in the process of gently cooking the food. So, this is where it's going to impact raw the most, and it's going to have the most questions around raw. Right now, it seems to be even more cat heavy than dog, focused. But I think keeping top of mind what's going on as an industry and what the protocols become it's just going to become a standard. And that's why having some governing body that's pushing these pieces together based on the most current info is like so important, whether that's the Paws Act or, what AFCO's talking about. I'm not going to get on a one side or the other convo around what's right, but I think that that's the reason for and what makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and I imagine what, you see the trickle down effects of this. I kind of wonder if we're going to start to see, more pushing of alternative proteins, more, promotion of beef or fish, depending on how the virus is spreading. I know, we've heard it is in cows to some extent, but obviously not to the same extent as it is in poultry, hence the name avian flu. But yeah, it's very, I think also there's probably a huge opportunity for freeze dried here, because it does toe that gap between fresh and raw and still provides the whole food nutrition. There's lots of studies, showing it's probably, equivalent or right up there with the best thing, you can feed your pet. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to it, and I know you've got a full day ahead of you, and so I don't want to keep you too long on your birthday here, Patrick. But any parting thoughts for us?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys, everyone at the show, everyone that puts their hard work into getting these expos planned. There's a lot that goes into it. So I just look forward to seeing a lot of folks. I think it's an opportunity for us to come together as an industry, just, respect everyone's time, enjoy everyone's knowledge, kind of learn from the industry as a whole, ask good questions and listen a lot. And that's just kind of what I'm looking forward to doing next week. And appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. The freeze dried piece, I could go on and on about that. I do think that's something I'm excited to see as well, how that fits in. But yeah, we'll look forward to catching up soon.
Sounds good. Well, enjoy your birthday. Happy birthday. And we'll see you on the show floor next week.
Awesome. Take care. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and I'm here today with Courtney Louch, Chief Marketing Officer at Primal Pet Foods. We have done a lot with Primal over the years, from their launch of Kibble in the Raw in December 2023 to having James Templeman on the show multiple times. Their Director of Nutrition. Dr. James Templeman, and we're thrilled to have Courtney with us today, looking ahead to Global Pet next week. We've been doing some features with leading companies across the industry, and really happy to have Courtney here to talk a little bit about what Primal is going to be unveiling at Global, as well as the trends that she's looking forward to examining at the show next week. Courtney, thanks so much for taking the time, and welcome to Petworking.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me. Really great to talk to you today.
Yeah, no, we're thrilled to have you on the show. It's always nice to continue to expand relationships in the company and meet another face that's at the top of the Primal ecosystem. So, yeah, I know we were talking a little bit before we got on camera here. You guys have a couple exciting new offerings, and one hits very close to home with you're launching Kibble in the Raw for cats.
Yes. Yes. And this definitely touches on a trend that I expect to see continued at Global this year, which is the idea of alternate formats, less processed food for pets. We launched Kibble in the Raw, really made a splash early 2024. We launched Kibble in the Raw for dogs. Our goal was to bring raw nutrition to more pets' bowls, really to make raw feeding more accessible to pets. And that was a huge launch for us. And we saw that we were really able to be successful in that, and that the majority of people buying Kibble in the Raw were new to the freeze-dried raw category. So that was great for us to learn and to see that we are really expanding just the presence of raw nutrition and growing the category. But right from the beginning, right after launch, one of the first pieces of feedback we heard from pet parents was, when are you launching cat recipes? I think, multi-species households were seeing that their cats were sort of coming up to their dog's bowl and trying to steal some of the food, and were really interested in it. And so we really spent the last year just perfecting the recipe for cats, making sure, of course, that it meets the high quality and safety standards we have at Primal, really focusing on palatability. We know that's so important for cats as well. And so we feel really great about the recipes that we'll be featuring and showcasing at Global this year. We have 3 new recipes of kibble in the raw for cats. So really excited to get that out in the market because we know that there's a lot of pet parents already looking for it.
Yeah, no, and I think it also hits on a trend that I'm sort of waiting with bated breath to see if it hits fulfillment. And from what I'm seeing, I think it will. And kibble in the raw for cats adds to it. But back at Pet Connect in December, we had the year of the cat presentation, and I continually say it. I laughed when I saw it at first because I was like, I feel like I've been hearing it's going to be the year of the cat for 3-4 years. But I think people are finally starting to realize that there needs to be more cat specific, cat focused, cat centric innovation. And that we just can't take the trends that we're seeing in the dog category and roll them over to cat. These are different, unique animals. And, we've actually, interestingly enough, since that presentation, we've had a lot more cat content coming on to Petworking, and I think that momentum is building. We saw last year with the State of Shelter Pet Adoption report that we did an episode on with Hills that cats and small dogs are really the only species slash subbreed types where adoption rates are growing. Everything else, adoptions are slowing. Length of stay for large dogs in shelters sadly is doubled. But people seem to be really leaning into cats and small dogs as their preferred companion animal as a population as a whole. So I think it only makes sense that we're seeing innovation developing to match that, because I think it has been an underserved category up to this point.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think consumers are probably ready for something new and fresh. Just looking at, the data as well, the category is relatively stagnant, right? It's really prime for new news, something to bring something new to consumers that they haven't experienced before, a new type of feeding. These consumers are, to your point, really looking for something cat-centric. They don't want the same version of what launched for dog, just, with cat written on the label. They really want something formulated and designed specifically for them. We're certainly mindful of that with kibble in the raw as we think about our piece size. Again, the higher protein content, the palatability, the type of proteins that we use, really thinking differently about it to design it specifically for cats, but still delivering on the same types of trends that pet parents are looking for, right? They're looking for less processed. They're looking for more fresh types of foods, alternate formats. And we just feel like there's an opportunity to bring more of that to the category and to pet parents and give them something really specifically for designed for cats.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously evident, in the gap between when you launched Kibble in the Raw for dogs and Kibble in the Raw for cats, there was some intentionality behind, the difference in formulation and making sure that you have a cat specific, cat focused product. And I think that's really cool. I think the other new product that you guys are going to be showcasing at Global, shelf stable goat milk, also speaks to those trends of, more of that desire for minimally processed, whole food nutrition. And I think it brings an interesting twist because, we've seen fresh explode in the last several years, and there's all sorts of different permutations of fresh, from the, never frozen refrigerated, fresh pet style to fresh frozen, which, you see with the farmer's dog and Stella and Chewy and things like that. And then, we also saw last year, there are some going back 2 years, we saw with Spot Farms, they came in with the fresh individually frozen, so it's quick thaw. And then you also saw a lot of shelf stable fresh launching last year with Nulo, and Portland Pet, I think, actually had it a year before they did. And Scott Pet came out with one last year. So, these gently cooked, hermetically sealed, almost like a meal ready to eat type option. Talk to us a little bit about, shelf stable goat milk. I think for a lot of people, that's a paradox of, it's milk. Don't I have to keep it refrigerated? How does, what do you see as the use case for it? And how did you guys develop this?
Yeah, no, great. And this is another trend I expect to see. One that's really huge in the human space, this idea of like functional beverages, kind of done differently for pets, but sort of very similar, sort of across the human pet landscape. So Primal's been a leader in frozen raw goat milk for years and really pioneered that category. Goat milk is extremely healthy for pets. It's really nutrient rich. We add probiotics to ours as well to really help support gut health. And most importantly, it helps with hydration. Many pets don't get enough hydration as part of their diet, particularly if they're fed, a dry type of food. And so adding that nutrient rich hydration for pets is just really, really beneficial to their overall health. So we've been growing the frozen raw goat milk category for a long time, but recognize that that doesn't meet every consumer's needs, right? Not every consumer is going to shop in the freezer or want to store something in the freezer or the refrigerator. And so this is just a way for us to sort of expand the consumer base for this type of product. Again, make this type of nutrient-rich hydrator more accessible to more pet parents in sort of a different format. Our goat milk is dehydrated. So really using the sort of safest, most less processed way for us to remove the moisture from the product, but really retain all of those nutrients and of course the probiotics for your pet. We're bringing it to market in 2 different formats, which I'm really excited about. So a pouch where you can sort of scoop it out and rehydrate it for your pet, and then really single serve individual sticks. So you can use it at home, easily add water to it. You can take it on the go. They're really, really convenient for pet parents to use, great for retailers to sort of have at the register as well. So really thinking about our customer partners too. And just really, we're excited to bring it to market because we've been a leader in this space for so long, but just haven't had that sort of alternate offering to reach a broader group of pet parents. But it's such a wonderful product. We have great feedback from consumers that use it. It really, really helps support pets' digestion and again, add that really critical moisture to a pet's diet. And our goat milk, both formats are for both dogs and cats.
Very cool. So you could mix that right in with like your freeze dried or serve it on its own or
yes, absolutely. You just mix the dehydrated version, you just mix with water, pour that right over your pet's meal, or just, pour the goat milk over the food and then add water on top. Great for any type of food, really freeze dried, kibble, anything will just be great. And it's very, very palatable. So we hear great feedback from consumers that both dogs and cats really love it as part of their meals.
That's awesome. Well, look forward to seeing that. And I'm guessing you might have some of those single stick pouches as samples at the booth. So
we'll definitely have the packaging on display for everybody to see, and we'll have it both of our new products in the new product showcase as well.
Very cool. That's great. That's awesome. Courtney, anything else that you're maybe not related to the new products that you're launching that you're excited to see and that you're looking forward to and exploring at the show next week?
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that I always look to sort of the human food space too, and just think about how that's going to translate to pet. We all know that the time in which those trends sort of translate from human to pet has continued to decrease. So I like to look at Expo West too, other sorts of human trade shows. I think, protein forward foods and snacks is really a big thing in the human space. Protein has always been big in pet, but I would say over the last couple of years, it's maybe been a less prominent focus than it has in the past. So I'm interested to see if that sort of rebounds and becomes a bigger claim or a bigger focus of new types of products, maybe even in the treats and snacks category. So that's one that I'm definitely interested to see how that sort of maybe shifts quickly from human to pet. And then another one, again, huge in the human space, haven't quite seen it translate to pet, but I'm really, really interested in this idea of total wellness, sort of whole body health, really like mind, body, spirit for pets, not just nutrition, but broader wellness and overall well-being. I think we certainly we certainly think about that at Primal because we believe that raw feeding is really feeding pets according to how they would eat in nature, but really how that translates to consumer claims, how products are positioned and new product launches. I'm just interested to see brands and across what categories, how companies might be thinking about that big trend that has been so prominent in the human space.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I think we saw it a little bit last year with, the focus on enrichment and, toys and treats like
Yes.
Wolf coming to the forefront, Licky Mat, Kong doing their ecosystem partnerships. But, the idea of, marrying hard goods with treats to extend that, occupy time and mental engagement.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I wonder, calming has been a huge trend on the supplement side for years. So I wonder if that would extend to mental wellness, and things like that. But no, definitely a good one, and one I haven't, nobody's really brought up yet, but I think you're spot on with that. So yeah, it'll be fun to see. There's always, those one or two unexpected things. I think it was for me last year at Global. It was the wolf toy, and the ball and the licking. I was like, this is great. It's really kind of addresses that gap of like, there's not really a way your dog can get into it in the way that traditional toys had. They can
Sure.
figure them out. But yeah, it'll be cool to see. Anything
Yeah.
else that on your mind for the show, or?
I don't think so. I always look for sort of what's on the fringes, what's really, really new. That's what I find to be the most exciting. Sometimes you gotta hunt it down a little bit, and really, really look for it. So that's sort of our focus too, as we think about our innovation pipeline. We really, really like to look, as far out, as far on the fringes as we can, and then really, try to think about what's going to be most compelling for consumers and our customer partners to sort of bring forward in a bigger way in future years. So that's always the most exciting part to me.
Yeah, no, it's always fun. I was talking with Patrick McGee from Get Joy earlier this week, and he put it to me. He said, this is the East Coast Pet Super Bowl. So always, it's fun to get excited for. It'll be great to be back down in Orlando and see what's new and see old faces and meet some new friends. And I'm looking forward to kind of checking off to see where we were right, what did we forecast coming, and what came out of left field and
Yeah.
left us all surprised. So we'll have to check back in after the show and hold ourselves accountable, so to speak.
Of course.
See how good our prognostications were. But Courtney, thank you so much for taking the time to join today. This has been great. I'm really looking forward to seeing the shelf-stable goat milk and kibble on the raw for cats, and whatever other new innovations we uncover at the show. So we'll see you in Orlando next week. But thank you so much for taking the time to join.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. This is Peter Kenseth with Petworking, everybody. On behalf of Courtney Louch, Chief Marketing Officer at Primal, we will see you in Orlando at Global Pet next week. Take care. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and I'm here today with Dr. Greg Aldrich of Nulo. Dr. Aldrich is a longtime repeat guest on Petworking, and we're here today to do a little bit of a preview of Global Pet, which is going to be taking place in Orlando next week. And similar to how we did our Super Zoo preview back in the summer, we're touching base with industry leaders, of which Dr. Aldrich is unquestionably one of them, and really happy he's taken the time to come back and offer us his thoughts on what he's looking forward to at Global Pet, and any exciting developments from Nulo that we can expect to see at the show. So, Dr. Aldrich, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you back on the show. Great to see you again, and looking forward to seeing you in person next week in Orlando.
Likewise, Peter. Great to see you as well. Thank you for the invitation to come visit, and it's exciting that we've turned the corner into the new year. It's really hard for me to get my head wrapped around the idea that we're already approaching Global next week and headed to Orlando, but here it is. Time flies when you're having fun.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's the first couple months of the year seem to have flown right by. I think you were saying right before we got on camera, spring has sprung down in Texas where you are. Up here outside of Burlington, we had a couple days of spring the last few days. It was in the high 60s, and then it turned back to snow last night. So the calendar's moving, but weather's not exactly lining up. I'll take skiing or golf as long as I have one.
There you go.
Definitely a nice trip down to Orlando for Global next week. So that'll be fun.
Yeah,
What
we're
are
looking
you?
forward to it. It's one of our first trips of the year, sort of after we get past the beginning and have all of our new and shiny things to share with folks. So we're looking forward to it.
What are some of those new and shiny things? What?
So we've been working on a couple of projects, and we're going to call them loosely. We're going to categorize them as improvements on existing product lines. Part of what happens in any company after you have your products in the stores for a period of time, there's an opportunity, we'll call it, to refresh them. And so our Freestyle line, which is what we sell primarily into our independent pet stores, is going through a little bit of a revamp. And it's really not monumental in product parlance, but it is in regards to the artwork and communication to our consumer. And so innovation isn't always about the product in the bag. Sometimes it's about the communication to the consumer. And so we've been working diligently to get some upgrades to our packaging and to improve the communication to the pet parents so that they understand what they're purchasing and make the right choices. So that's one. And you'd say, well, that's just a few things, but I think it's 70 or 80 different product SKUs that had to be touched, and that's a lot of work. That's a pretty heavy lift for our art and development people and our packaging team. So that's the big one that we're really talking about. And then we have a couple of additional products that we're launching. One is a small breed dog formula that's it's intended for the smaller characters in our homes, and it's focused on beef and sweet potato. And so we already have products in that category, but we've been getting requests by consumers for another flavor, and this certainly addresses that hearty beef flavor for our little guys.
That's great.
We also have another product coming out in the Limited Plus. It's really focused on that red meat area, and it's a lamb based diet. So a couple of new products and an entire refresh of our Freestyle product line. So we're pretty excited to share that with folks, and it's an opportunity to embrace and enhance the visual appeal of the product category.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you're the first one I've talked to that has mentioned a focus on packaging, but it was definitely something that was on my radar as to, how are people, are we seeing any new innovative, pack types, or what kind of, we're always looking at, what's the focus of the messaging?
Right.
Do you feel like, is there packaging more sustainable? Is it keeping the food fresher, or is it largely just a focus on the artwork and the messaging?
Well, So I guess one of the things is to open up the communication tools. So some of our messaging in the past may have not communicated as effectively to our consumers what it was as they were purchasing. We have to recognize that when consumers come into a store, they're inundated with a huge variety of colors and sizes and shapes and textures and a lot of messages. They're really bombarding them in retail outlets with a lot of information, and that information overload creates an opportunity for us as product manufacturers to focus their attention. And so that's one of the aspects that we've been working on is how do we focus their eye time to negotiate through all of this infiltration of information so that they can make informed choices. It's not about trying to dupe somebody into making an improper decision, but really more about helping them, giving them the support they need so that they can channel their eye to make the right decision for them and their pet. That's one. And so there's a little bit of, I'm going to call it artwork, but it's a little bit of science in regards to keeping people's attention focused where they want it to be and removing distraction. And the pictures on the package can help with that. The artwork and the orientation of the product, the features, the things that you're communicating about what's in the bag can help with that. So those are very much innovations. We don't think about it that way. We usually think about it as it's got to be the nugget or the shelf life or something like that. So it's not about sustainability. It's not about packaging or retention. It's really about helping consumers make good choices. That's number one. And, with that overload of information, we usually have about 5 to 6 seconds to get our message across. And so the visual cues are important to consumers for us as manufacturers and for them. And so that's what we've been really focused on here with this freestyle refresh in our packaging. There are some other technical features we've added, flat bottom bag, interrupted gussets, a ziplet. It's basically a Velcro reseal so that we can keep it fresh. All of those things are an improvement to the consumer experience. And that's what we're really focused on here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear you talk. You're talking about the communication to the consumer and capturing their eye and visual cue and time to get your message across. It resonates. For me as a consultant, it resonates to me like what I'm thinking about when I'm creating slides for my clients. I always tell our analysts, a slide isn't good if somebody can't look at it and understand the key takeaways in 15 to 30 seconds. And in the store, you have even less time. It's not a captive audience. It's not people who are sitting there listening to you. You've got to draw their eye and then communicate what you need to get across. And like you said, that is innovation, because if you can't actually communicate the innovation that is in the bag and the value of what's in the bag, nobody's going to try it, or people aren't going to understand it. And I think more and more, you don't necessarily have that top flight, employee there to explain it to people. And you do have to rely on the consumer to educate themselves a little bit. Hopefully in an independent pet store, you have good customer service, somebody there to answer questions. But more and more people, aren't seeking out, input from store employees when they're there. So it totally makes sense. And so you did that with the freestyle line. Metal series is staying the same.
Yeah, metal series, it's staying the same. We've already been asked, okay, when's metal series improvements coming? Well, they will be soon. You can only climb so many mountains at a time, right? This was a big lift already to get all of the freestyle SKUs updated, and they'll be flowing through into the stores very soon. Plus a few new products that are being launched here, these small breed and the limited plus. And then we have a host of other projects that we're working on that will probably be rolled out at Super Zoo. But no, we're not thinking about metal series just yet. There's some other things that need to be addressed. One monument at a time.
Well, it's not like it's hurting you. I think you were one of 3 pet food manufacturers that showed year-over-year growth
Right.
last year, right? It was
Right.
Nulo, Purina, and Hills, if memory serves me correctly.
Correct. Yeah. We were in the pack with some big guys. And so we've been continuing to improve, and part of it's through innovation, but innovation in things beyond just the product in the bag. That's important, but like you say, if I don't communicate the message properly and the package is the primary mode of communication to our pet parents, if we don't communicate that properly, they won't pick up the innovation that's in the bag.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. So you guys are, new products. You've got the small breed beef formula, the limited ingredient lamb, kind of addressing
Yeah.
some new flavor. Is that at all in response to avian flu? And is that anything that is affecting what you're seeing from consumer preference or your supply chain availability, things like that?
No, it's really not a response to those things. It's us listening to our customers. It may sound strange or simplistic, but truly these are recipes that we've been asked to produce for at least 2 or 3 years, if not longer, and we were always reluctant for one reason or another to come into those categories with those flavor choices. But we finally said, okay, we need to listen, and this is the response. So sometimes you have to listen to your customer. Those other issues are still out there. Supply chain is continuing to be a challenge, but right now it hasn't been as disruptive as you might think based on what you hear in the press. And I don't mean to lump every issue into the press. That's probably not fair, but avian influenza hasn't really had a huge impact on us in the traditional shelf-stable pet food area.
Is it impacting gently cooked at all, or?
It's mostly in the raw refrigerated frozen category where they're using minimal processing or no processing at all. There are some studies out there that would suggest that through proper processing, thermal processing, we're going to have a control over avian influenza. And so it's not transmitted then through the food. But if we don't have the proper level of processing and raw material safety, then that could be the issue. So today, it's not been a problem for us.
You feel like that, obviously last year at Global, minimally processed was a huge focus.
Yeah,
Do you
so
feel like we might be seeing a step back from that because of the avian flu, or?
No. So let's kind of talk about, let's go nerd on this whole processing area. So there's raw, refrigerator, frozen, and then this minimal process is somewhat of a general description to say that we're using just enough heat to help us, or just enough processing to help us get to a validated safety with regard to pathogens, and now today with avian influenza, right? So it's either going to be HPP or radio frequency or steam or some other low and slow heat process. So we retain the nutrition to a level that's virtually the same as raw or refrigerated, but we get the safety with it.
So when you were referring to like actually raw frozen or raw refrigerated, not freeze dried, not steam dried, air dried, cold pressed.
So I'm looking at that as sort of a middle category here. You have extensively processed, you have this minimally processed, and then you have no process when it regards to this food safety. And we've tried to be in that shelf stable category, and I think that's where refrigeration, frozen, I love the idea of it. It just really requires an entirely different infrastructure, and you have to have the proper levels of processing, temperature, time to make sure that those pathogenic organisms or those viruses don't slip through and infect your animal and yourself.
No, I mean, food safety paramount concern. And, I
Yeah.
mean, I was seeing it at WVC earlier this month. Fresh Pet was there, and they said the number one thing we want to get across at this show is that we are not raw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a big concern. And not to disparage raw diets by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's a lot of literature out there that that they can be very helpful. They're really good for your pet. But I think the biggest concern that veterinarians and a lot of people have with them, if you're not feeding raw, is the concern about, okay, am I potentially introducing a risk of foodborne illness to my pet?
Right. So the challenge here, and one could go back and I'm going to call it teleological. That was one of those big words that we used, those 50-cent words we used to use in college. And the idea is, as well as the origin of the question. And in essence, if we go back in time a few eons, our wild progenitor dogs and cats ate raw. They ate it on the hoof, or they ate it on the run, so to speak. And so they were exposed to all of those germs in their environment. And so why is it that if things are any different now today? Why can't we come in and use raw foods or no unprocessed wild prey today? And the question or the answer would simply be that we could. The challenge is that we're today in a modern, commercial, civilized world, and whatever we bring into a large manufacturing plant to convert into food for hundreds and thousands and millions of animals through that factory, whatever comes in ends up getting spread across everything. And so that's really the question here or the concern is managing the spread.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And you don't want salmonella or avian flu or whatever else. I think there's few things that can be more damaging to a brand than a recall. And to that end, I think you see most manufacturers and a lot of pet parents erring on the side of safety. And I think that's why you've seen such a growth in these minimally processed diets, whether it's freeze dried or gently cooked or gently cooked shelf stable or fresh frozen, fresh refrigerated, is that they bridge that gap between the whole food nutrition that you find in a raw diet and, like you said, maintaining that nutrient availability through low heat processing. Outside of that, is there anything, you've mentioned packaging, catering to the consumer in terms of the small breed dog. And I think obviously it'll be fascinating to see how fresh and minimally processed diets continue to evolve at this show. Anything else that you're expecting to see or curious to see?
Yeah. So I guess first off, I think we're going to see a continuation of or an exploration of this raw minimally processed. I also anticipate we're going to see hybrid versions of those. So it's maybe like we introduced a couple of years ago, the cold pressed, and we also had a raw plus, which was a combination of minimally processed extruded starch with a freeze dried piece. I think you're going to see multiple component products coming into the equation. A number of brands out there that are bringing those to the marketplace. I'm not sure exactly whether that message has come through to the consumer yet, whether they're going to adapt to that. But it's certainly an interesting approach. From my perspective as a nutritionist, those multi-component products offer us an opportunity to cook those things that need to be cooked, like proteins, to the right level for safety, and to process appropriately the starches, as an example, and maybe not process the vitamins or the minerals. They don't need to be cooked. And so it gives us an opportunity to compartmentalize or deconstruct the food into its necessary components. So I see that. One of the things I think is the industry is wrestling with right now is that the kibble business has been relatively flat. And I don't know if that's because people are moving up or down in terms of the price platform or columns, or whether they're looking for these alternatives and they're selecting away from the tried and true. But I anticipate that there's going to be some new wrinkles on everyday kibble that we haven't seen previously to try to generate some new excitement in that category.
Yeah, I think we saw one at Super Zoo that it not totally, but it was a Curian, or yeah, it might have been Petcurian. They introduced kind of a kibble that you could serve wet or
Yeah,
dry. You know, not wholly novel. Like anybody can add water to kibble, but they were marketing it that way and had formulated it that way so that you could do it. And
right.
maybe things like that to generate some interest.
Yeah, that's our baked and coated line that's sold in through the national stores. That one's been very popular, and it invokes the idea of being able to add water and create your own broth or gravy while you're doing that. And adding warm water to a kibble is always going to entice our dogs to come eat. And it
Yeah.
unlocks the aroma. So I think there's some opportunities there in the kibble business of the everyday brown and round to give it a new sort of feel, or at least open up the consumer's imagination as to what it could be. And then, of course, the economy is kind of wobbly right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's got people looking at opportunities for what I'll call value improvement. And I'm saying that as probably a positive euphemism, but there's an opportunity to look at ways that we could give features to the customer, the pet parent, that are at a lower cost.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sort of an extension of the last several years. We finally kind of got inflation under control, and now you're seeing, the tariff uncertainty and all
Yeah.
those things kind of thrusting us right back into that. So, I know we've seen, I think Canada launched, the 50-pound bag for, the everyday feeding. And
Yeah.
last couple of years, we've seen a lot of messaging around, cost per day metrics and things like that. And, wouldn't surprise me if we see some of that come back, because, towards the end of last year, it looked like maybe, inflation was starting to come down. And now I think people are looking at the tariff uncertainty, and we don't know where it's going to go. So
Right.
it doesn't shock me that we might see some belt tightening and some preemptive responses to that.
Yeah, I think some companies may be out exploring those opportunities. So there was a no holds barred, go as high a price as you wanted to through the last couple of years. And while that has created some really fascinating products in the category, I anticipate that those will kind of wane for a little while. There'll be a few of those really premium products that'll be introduced, but I think the bulk of what we're going to see is innovation is going to come out in that middle category.
Which has been kind of the weaker
Yeah.
price point the last couple of years. It's people either going way up or trading
Yeah.
down. That $50 to $60 bag has been sort of the dead zone. So
Yeah.
you think that's going to kind of come back?
I think there's some opportunities in that category to attract people back into it. But we have to communicate. Again, we're coming back to the packaging here. We have to communicate to them what those features are and what the value is to their pet. And they have to be able to understand that in fairly direct and deliberate terms that they can bring into their understanding, right? So pictures, graphics, claims, badges and bullets, and starbursts on packages that reveal what's really in there that appeals to them.
Good full circle conclusion there. We started with packaging, we got through everything else, and we came back to packaging in terms of communicating to the consumer at that mid-tier price point.
Yeah,
that was good. I like
yeah.
it.
Well, I wasn't intentional, but I'll take credit for it. How's that? It's all in the bag,
Excellent.
right?
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Aldrich, thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been awesome, as always. Really enjoy the conversation. Always appreciate your insights, and looking forward to stopping by the Nulo booth to see those new products and
You do that, and then
get a
what
handshake
we'll
in
do
person.
here is we'll flip a coin as to who wins on whether or not my crystal ball is actually working.
Well, I've been telling everybody what we're going to have to do is get everybody back together, maybe for a panel discussion in,
Yeah,
like 3-4 weeks, and we can see,
yeah,
what we thought of the show and how
yeah,
right or wrong we all were.
yeah. I'm sure I'm gonna learn a few things that I thought I knew or were gonna happen that will actually end up being completely wrong. So I'm looking forward to find out where I'm wrong.
Always goes that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Some of them you hit out of the park, and there's going to be those ones that come out of left field that we're not expecting. But
That's
those
the
I
fun
feel like are
one.
the fun ones.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, we will see you in Orlando next week. On behalf of Dr. Greg Aldrich and Nulo, this is Peter Kenseth with Petworking. Looking forward to Global Pet, and we'll see where we're right and wrong. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Take care.